there's a mother who is doing all the right things, reading all the right books, taking all the right advice, and yet is still finding it a struggle.
How does sovereignty in parenting look different to what you were describing when you were talking about the hamster wheel thinking and the looking for answers outside? How does it look different in parenting or in mothering?
Because it allows you as much, but it's that capacity to look inside and to really ask yourself what's actually going on here for me. How am I parenting from hidden beliefs, hidden patterns of behavior that are just automatically coming up because there's no space. It's just automatic. It's automatic. My shouting, at my children is automatic because of my nervous system is first and foremost incredibly unregulated and unnourished. And I'm parenting from wounding, not from my true values. And I'm parenting from what society tells me it should look like. I'm parenting from cultural beliefs as opposed to my own deep values.
And yet, what you're also pointing to there is, even if we were to get in touch with those values, there can be an element of fear around living from there. Is that good enough? Can I trust myself? Can I trust this guide inside, as it were, to be good enough in the eyes of the world outside? And the point is, I think, that you're trying to make is ultimately sovereignty or sovereignty in parenting is just not looking outside. It's not worrying about that. It's almost devoting to prioritizing. That's really what I mean by devoting. Prioritize what feels right inside over whatever anyone else might think about that. Or even what you, with the conditioned thinking, might think about that.
Yeah. And I love what you say there, because then you need that space between holding what's conditioned thinking here and illuminating, because there'll be that level and then there'll be another level. As in you have a sense that there's a level of condition. I think everyone knows on some level what they have, a suspicious idea. They have some thinking that there's something going on. Like, I kind of knew that I had been brought up in such a way that I felt so much judgment. I knew that even before I did any of this work. I could see that playing out, that everything I was doing was being judged because of my parenting, my mothering particularly. So I knew that, but I didn't know what to do with it. And I had no capacity to unravel everything below that so that I could create my own new story based on my values from a cleaner, if you like, or clearer vessel of me.
You mentioned something earlier, because it almost sounded like there's two things going on, because there's all of that you've just described, the conditioned thinking, the kind of fear-based thinking in a way.
Yeah.
Also, you mentioned about a dysregulated nervous system at play also. It's a double whammy of difficulty. Can you explain how that might be playing in or making things harder?
Because it's like when we're in fear, and we might not know it as fear, but when we're in a situation where it's, oh, my children are shouting, my children are misbehaving, and I'm outside and I need to stop that. Everything in your system is automatically going to oh my God, this can't be happening. And you are therefore naturally responding from that place. And it's almost like, sadly, it's what the children then hear. So they, like, it's just so, oh God, it's so automatic. They do one small thing and there's no space because you are just shouting because your nervous system can't hold and be with space and relaxing and peace and looking inside. It's just an automatic scream. And people will describe it as my but like I want to say there are no buttons, there are no boundaries, but it will feel like, and you'll hear everyone saying, my child is pushing my buttons or pushing my boundaries. And that's what it feels like. When that is happening, it is a dysregulated nervous system. In both, in the child as well as the parent.
There was something coming through as you were talking about that dysregulation. Oh, I think it was that what I'm hearing and what you're saying is that, of course, as with everything, there are layers to this.
Yeah.
But it sounds like alongside all the love and cherishing that you and I are here to do, there's this first very important piece of identifying or seeing or illuminating maybe the old story that's at play, the conditioning that's at play, the fears that are at play, completely understandable. And as you say, some of the conditioning will come from the way we were parented. And then there will be fears based upon societal expectations that we've grown up with about how children should behave and how parents should look and be and all the rest of it. But it sounds like that's almost the first layer, seeing that old story for what it is, and not judging it, even just seeing it, like allowing it to be seen.
Yes.
Because somehow in that, it takes away a small part of the sort of self-judgment that we do, because it helps to explain why we're behaving the way we are.
Yeah.
Doesn't make it better or right, or it just explains it. And I know for me, that was just a massive weight off my shoulders. It almost helped me see, it's not that I'm necessarily, I am creating it, but it just took the blame out of it somehow. Yes. That had been like another rod I've been beating myself with that was stopping that space you're talking about being created.
Yeah. Yeah. The word I'm here is letting, honoring, being with the understanding, seeing the patterns, and could you almost like for 2 weeks, maybe that is, be with them every time they arise, to let them arise. Like the more you illuminate them, the more they will arise. And just like,
no, it's not just an intellectual exercise at all, which it could become, because often I find the mothers who get themselves caught up in these hamster wheels are the ones who are really brilliant and intelligent and self-reflective, and that's why it's so painful to them that they're parenting in a way that
I want you, and that's brilliant, that you need to like you like that's of itself a half an hour's conversation, Kate. Do you see? And that speaks to me. Oh, at 16 I decided, almost like it was like, right, I'm clever and I'm going to work really hard and I'm going to become an accountant and I'm going to study unless there a right answer. And it speaks to that first, my dad said to me, Janet, put the books away when Alex was born, but I didn't hear it. It speaks to that, doesn't it? And it's a balance, like that, like we've always said, it, you kind of go from here to slight here, and because like intellectual, we're saying heart, intuition, and actually in reality what's so beautiful is more balance.
Yeah. Well, it's union of the two rather than having them at odds with one another.
Exactly, which is what's happening at the moment.
Yeah.
When you're suffering.
I know for myself, the piece I found the hardest, and I mean, like, I can feel my old self here, was the allowing of it. I can't even say the loving of it. It was, I could do the seeing of it really easily because I have this, busy brain.
Yeah.
Clever, like you've just been saying.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, cool. Okay, yeah, I can spot that. I can spot that. Aren't I doing well? I can see all the ways that I'm struggling here. I can start to understand the conditioned thinking that's behind some of those behaviors. But the kind of the seeing of it out there was kind of easy. The bringing it closer and the kind of loving of it, or even just the holding of it, was like a mega piece for me. And the only way I was able to even begin to do that, in all honesty, and you know this because you witnessed this, was sharing some of that illumination, i.e. what I was seeing, having it witnessed by others, and not having it shamed by others. Oh God, isn't she doing badly? Or there was just no judgment in the circle that we were sharing in. It was such an important part of kind of the medicine that was available in that circle for us. And I remember you were such a key part in this, because you helped me to see that even though those behaviors, even though the things happening in my parenting didn't look particularly pretty or good in my mind, it was all coming from love, which was what you essentially taught me. And bit by bit, I managed to take that belief into myself and see what a wonderful mother I was, even though it didn't always look right in my eyes. Like, it was coming from such deep love. And the reason I was sitting in that circle was because I wanted to do my parenting in a way that felt really true for me. You know what I'm trying to say? And to bring it fully into my heart. So just to say that is a very, very big and difficult step, I think, for people that can easily intellectualize what's going on.
Yeah.
But that big step of moving into the heart is like, it's where the healing happens, but it's also a challenge. And it was only possible for me to do it with others. I don't think I could have done it on my own.
No. And what from that I think the word that stands out, there are a couple of words, is healing, firstly, and that big difference between fixing and healing and that love. And I would wonder if you could add in, yes, of course, to the sitting in a circle, sitting in a council, sitting in love without anyone at all judging, fixing, giving you advice, taking away, almost like something from another age is how I always see it. It's like a counsel, and a counselment in the real old-fashioned way of it, which is actually just listening. And it's listening. And again, I think it's so important to be taught almost, and I think it is to be taught because we've been conditioned out of it, to be taught to listen from our heart. Both for the person that's being listened to, so you were listened to and held and witnessed in all of your rawness and what that gave you, and what it gives and holds and really helps those that are listening and witnessing it too. Particularly in terms of then being with your children. And it almost, I'm going to call it a skill. So I think there's like there's two things on offer, is the person that gets to be with their rawness and that listening. But my deep, that's another bigger inquiry, and we go really deep on that one. But what I would love to know, other than the love and the witnessing, one other thing is how did your feeling of spirit also give you comfort to go into that place inside that vulnerability, because it's more than just the people, it's more than just me sitting in circle with you and the others that were there.
And I will answer the question, but I also at the same time would love to hear that question answered by you also.
Okay.
So I'm going to also just think for a minute, or feel in at least, to the answer for that. But if you have an answer right now, maybe you could speak it, if it's immediate for you.
Me. I think it's, of course, now she's asked the question, it's really difficult. Well, it's not difficult, but it is of course it's a feeling, and we have to almost keep revisiting it. So it could just feel like a little spark initially. Could it be? Is it possible? Could spirit be there and holding me? So it's, and of course, like the mind is going to question it. And then it's just a sense of, wow, so many times in my life when I did feel such pain and such problems, that actually there really was something there holding me, despite me not actually really understanding it. And then once I could just let go of my intellect, it was almost like you just feel the energy, and then you start to get, it's like an amalgam, it becomes you, because I think it could feel like spirit is separate. And certainly coming from not being at all religious, it almost felt like spirit isn't you. But when we start to feel it and bring it in and really experience it, you can see that actually it is you. And it's all that, like we talked about, learning to know about your values and what is right for you. That becomes a listening to your own soul and a softening. Always a softening. Always a softening. And then nature would be my next thing, but that's probably a longer thing to be drawn into.
Interestingly, that was actually where I was going to begin with my answer. Listening to you, I was realizing, because for me, and this is different for everyone, right? But for me, that journey with spirit has actually been a very long one, and in different ways. Yet, okay, let me just go back to the nature bit first. Okay. Where I was struggling, as I've already said, was the kind of loving of myself, or and somewhere along the line, I remembered how much I love being in nature. I mean, in my 20s, I probably forgot how much I loved it. And then somewhere along the line, I remembered. And although I wasn't really deeply consciously connecting to nature, I had this real longing for it. And so at some point, I allowed that longing to lead the way. And I went and I sat and I noticed, and I just sort of set the intention to allow nature in more, and to like literally put it in my diary to go for walks and access nature more. And bit by bit, I remembered how much nature holds me, like how much balm I find in nature. And the balm is love, essentially. And so that really helped me, as well as the people in the circle, the humans in the circle. And then, you know, when you quieten down in nature, then you get a feeling that you're not alone. You get a feeling that there's something holding you, like you were describing it. It just becomes kind of self-evident with it, bit by bit, but you sort of have to allow it, and you also have to look for it. And I remember at one point almost playing with it and being like, and like asking spirit to show me signs, and there'd be feathers everywhere, or, you know, just little thing, playing like a child with it. And choosing to believe that all those feathers there were there for a reason, because I'd asked them to be, or, you know, it's a choosing to believe. It's like, do you want to live your life mundane or magical? I remember like entering into that inquiry.
Yes.
Because if you want to live your life magical, you've got to believe in magic. You've got to believe that you're held by something greater than yourself and all the rest of it.
But I might start crying. Oh,
So
so,
yeah,
yeah.
big
I,
answers.
I mean, it's probably a very deep one, but when I had, um, and I just want a presence that there are, so there are lots of smaller, wonderful examples, and the one I'm giving is quite an extreme example. But I think that's possibly because I am being drawn to this sort of shamanic path. So we would naturally get that. When I had a shamanic healing in the hut, and a bat appeared, and the shaman was just so absolutely, there's a reason for this. And he to see and witness and be with his utter belief, trust in magic was just one of the most beautiful experiences. And I just want to say is that we can create those in some smaller way too, because this is like extreme. But and he then went and spoke after the healing a couple of days. He sent me a message a few days later saying, I've spoken to the people who owns these woods, and they've owned them for 20 years. They've never seen bats in these woods. That was a sign. And at that point, your mind will go, and it's like, as you say, it could be a small thing. It could be a feather. It could be a pebble. It could be the tiniest thing ever. Okay. Not necessarily the bat. But it's, yeah, do I choose to believe that the bat was a sign for me or not? Am I going to go all in? And it's those, and initially it will be small things of, yeah, I'm all in, I'm all in, I'm all in, I'm all in. Because then it just becomes the most beautiful feeling. And it's almost like once your mind can let go of it, you get rewarded with a feeling. It's almost allows more. Yeah.
You were saying, well, the reason you wanted us to presence this piece was because
Yeah.
you feel that's a very unique part of the work that we do with people. It's not just the teaching women to parent from sovereignty, which is where we began. You're also presencing this important piece, which is developing a connection to spirit, or an awareness of spirit, is what I'm hearing.
Yes.
And
yeah.
I wonder if you just link the two together to why that's important or significant in this work.
I suppose so many things. I think it's potentially looking at would I like the difference. The first thing I'll say is like there's the difference between kind of like what's normal, and that is a very much society thing. It feels and often feels like it's really normal to be stressed. Everyone says, I'm stressed, I'm exhausted, I'm overwhelmed, I'm this. And everyone goes, oh yeah, me too. Right. And I'm not trying to criticize that, but it's just to see that that is a really normal way of living in this modern society. And at the root of that is because we're not connected with what is natural in us. Actually, what we're pointing to is what is actually really, really natural. It's almost like it's been conditioned out of us. So we're illuminating and suggesting that we're going to actually come back to what's natural, and that feeling of being whole. And part of that, and this is why particularly looking at young babies and young children, toddlers, can be really, really helpful, because they are so in tune with what is natural. So I think it's a sense of that, and that to say it is really, really natural that we would be connected with spirit. And it's that disconnection from it that comes about as we grow up in a modern setting, that almost just becomes like a rupture, like it's like pulling away. And the words, one of the, I can't remember what with this, with children, often people say to them, put your sensible head on, like almost, be more sensible, like be more grown up, be more, think more.
Your thinking hat. Put your thinking.
Yes, put your thinking hat on. Yeah, and that can be really useful, and not, not, but it is almost getting them out of sometimes what is really, really natural for them, which would, so that for me was a really, once I could start to see that, and I could really see how being disconnected from something really helped me. Does that answer your question? Because I'm not sure I absolutely did.
I'm like feeling like I'm just channeling something here, which basically is frustration and anger at what you're saying. So possibly this is how other people might feel listening to this conversation. I feel frustrated and angry. You're telling me that I'm not even sure what you're telling me. Are you telling me I shouldn't be stressed? And then there's this fear, if I'm not stressed, what, I just kind of swan about outside in nature and just hope for the best. Like, I'm just wondering if there's a way of us.
Yeah, true. I love that. Yeah, no. Like, and that's all welcome. If anyone is feeling that, yes, bring it on. Yes.
But also just to say, it can be very, and I know you know this, it can be very disorientating, this kind of conversation or this kind of path that we're inviting people to look down, even if they don't want to step onto it yet, just to look down it. It's like, well, what's going to guide me? How am I going to be sure that I, still function? And like a kind of feeling of discombobulation, which, before you answer my question, if I may just say, I feel is also kind of necessary, because it's about, what we're talking about is taking away some of the, how do you say it? Wow, let me stop actually, and I just let you just speak to where you were hearing me with my frustration and anger. How did this work? How can this not just be a disaster?
Yeah, I love that, because you've almost like firstly, what I think it really points to and shows is that you and I have this absolute humanness, because we are not in at all sitting there in some kind of castle of fairyland and offering a fairy way of being. I mean, I actually love fairies, but it's such a, we're both here to help people. What I really want, and I know I'm not quite answering your question, but it's this this capacity for mums to be able to get their children out of bed in the morning and get them to school, and for them to get to work and to live an everyday life that is far easier. I just want to presence that. So, and I get it, that you're presencing these people going, yeah, but this is just, I'm not interested in magical thinking. It's all of this. I just want a better life. So I love that you're bringing that up, because it will absolutely be a fear from anything that we're seeing. And we want, like, it's all welcome. Like, I want people to be able to have that come up. It needs to be addressed. So I just wanted to presence that. That doesn't quite answer the question, but
also to say there's a kind of frustration and a sadness as well coming through now, like a sadness, because part of the reason the frustration and the anger and the pushback is there is because behind that is a kind of sadness that maybe all this time I've been living life in a way that hasn't been nourishing me, and that therefore hasn't been nourishing my children. And of course we've been doing what we need to. They're dressed, they're fed, all the rest of it. But there's just this deep sense of, oh, it could be different. And that there's a kind of a sadness. And I remember when I first started out on this path, there was all of these things. There was anger, there was frustration, there was sadness, there was almost a sense of despair as I began on this journey. Like there was a longing to begin it, but there was also just a lot of sadness, kind of a grief, actually, interestingly. So just a presence for all those emotions are welcome and have been felt on this path.
Yeah. And I think what I can also really see in my own experience and working with mums and for you, because like your children are still much younger than mine, is despite that, despite myself, despite all of the frustration, despite all of the stress, despite me mothering from my old stories, what a surprise to me is how amazing it is. Like how, when I look back with that gift of getting older and looking at my boys, it's like, oh, something was actually there. There was enough of me in my parenting, despite my screaming, despite my shouting. There was enough of my value, and there was certainly enough love. And I get to, I suppose, like I've come out the other end, but I'm there now where I don't feel that guilt and all of that. I can only feel love. And I look at it and I can see how much spirit had my back, even though I wasn't aware of that. And that has allowed me to trust and be with spirit even more.
Yeah. But also what you're helping me to see there is that if you look back, what really bothered you looking back was how you were feeling and all of that. It wasn't actually the parenting you were doing necessarily. It was more the feeling, right? That wouldn't it have been amazing to not be feeling the way you were feeling? Maybe. Again, not regretting it, but
totally.
You can see how it could have been a different feeling.
Yes. Okay, that's so beautiful. That makes me want to literally, I can feel every emotion rising, and I can feel, I love that you've brought that, because it was me. It was my internal world was so, a whole another conversation of just how difficult it was emotionally, mentally. It was quite frankly dark internally. And feeling that no one until they could with you and other people is, I wasn't allowed, well, it felt too much ever to really truly share that deep dark rawness inside those real feelings. And we're back to that witnessing, that holding, to be able to slowly, gently, really, truly share what is going on inside, presencing things that society would probably say it's too raw, it's too much. For example, my thought that I didn't want to be in this world. I'd be better off dead, basically. The children would certainly be better off with a different mother, which is unbelievable. When you're looking outside, people will go, oh, don't be so ridiculous. But it was how I actually felt.
you know what I'm hearing here is, you know how we've said before that our desire is absolutely not like to proliferate, whatever the word is, like another guide to parenting. Like here's another. It's just like, so not that, right? As in here's a way to parent differently.
Here's a handbook of parenting. Yeah.
What I hear and what you're saying is, you know, our role here is really, when you talked about your internal world just then, like my desire is, you know, to support women to just have the best best relationship with their internal world they could have, whatever that looks like, but to support them to cherish that internal world and to be with it and whatever's going on. And, you know, I love the idea of, I guess I was hearing that you carried a certain shame about your internal world back then, which kept you, so you just held it with yourself, you didn't share it, but my God, how heavy that must have felt at times.
Yes. Yeah. That every time I wish I wasn't of this world. I feel so depressed. All of that was because I didn't love myself. And like every time it's what I need to, I think of some of the things, the strategies that I used to come up with. Okay, so every time it's like, right, I just need to get a better routine in place. That's how it felt to me with you know, 3 little children. I needed to be more organized, more this, more that. That was coming from, at the core of it, that I didn't love myself and I didn't have that peace internally in my internal system. And I would not have known that.
I'm hearing that we're almost coming back here to sovereignty, because what you're speaking about is such a trap that I fall into even now.
You've got little kids, you're back, like your children are younger. It's just inevitable, by the way. I want to presence that, but it's the recognizing. So full love to you.
Thank you. And as I've become more and more aware of my internal cycle, like my menstrual cycle, I can also see I'm in the autumn of my cycle, so everything looks a little like it's not as good as it could be. And so yes, even just yesterday, I started having that thinking you're talking about, because there was kind of, it seemed to me that chaos was reigning in the house, and that the reason the children were being like that was because, I was like, right, everybody, we need to like rein this in. We need to dun, there's no more of this, there's no more play. You know, I was throwing everything at it, trying to feel better in myself. Since there wasn't actually, probably it was a similar day as to any day in our house, but because of the way I was feeling inside, it felt like I needed to find a way to sort the external world out so I could feel better. And bit by bit, as I learned to understand a bit more my internal world and my cycle, there's that tiny gap you talked about right at the beginning of having a minute, Kate. You can play that game if you want, and you can make all your lists and your strategies and all the rest of it if you want, if it's going to make you feel better. And sometimes it's a good idea, right? A meal plan or whatever.
Yeah. Perfectly. Yeah, totally.
But when you're coming at those things from I need to feel better here, that's why I'm doing them. I always know then I'm kind of not on a winning streak, as it were, that there's something else that needs tending to first, i.e. me. And whether that's like literally leaving the house for a minute, telling your partner I'm going for a bath, I just need to breathe, like whatever it is, even going to the toilet and locking the door. I mean, there's a million strategies we can talk about, and you find the ones that work for you. But what am I trying to say? It's yes. What am I trying to say, Janet? There's something here about sovereignty. That to me is sovereignty, when we don't think it's the outside world that needs to change for us to feel better.
Yeah. And even if we don't necessarily, there are times when we don't see it in the moment, because human beings, and of course, and as I said, you still have younger children, but it's I know for a fact, knowing you and knowing what you're pointing to and knowing myself and knowing other women, is your gap and with regard to your question, between you having that I need to, oh my gosh, you know, as you say, rein it in, it's all going wrong, to what's going, like whatever arises, what's going on for me, can I look inside, can I take a pause, can I, as you say, go and say I need a bath? Can I just go and take my shoes off and go and put my feet in the ground? And look, I was really seeing there's some of the ancient practices, particularly around the shamanic things that I've really worked with, could be really helpful. So there's lots there. Just want to presence that to, oh, this is not about the children. This is about me and my inner world. And that, I'm not going to ask you to put time to it as such, but has that gap shortened for you?
Well, it's actually got wider, is the way I see it.
Okay.
That there's a little bit more space for me to think.
But the time between you noticing that you need more space.
I have to be honest with you, because this is what happens during the autumn of my cycle. That space feels really tight. Like it feels like there's something happening there. I need to make it, like, it's really hard for me. Other parts of my cycle, other parts of the month, much easier. It's really hard. And yesterday, there was just a tiny bit more space that said, okay, what do you need here, Kate? I basically needed to connect with spirit, is the way I see it.
Yeah.
That moment, I just needed some help from somewhere else. I needed some, and the thought that came to me is I need to light a candle. And I did light the candle. I didn't get as far as doing the incense. I was thinking I would have some incense, but I did burn a bit of rosemary quickly just to create a different atmosphere. But my thought in that moment, which is so helpful for women that don't have a partner or parent alone, or in those times when your partner's away, I just thought I can do this with the kids. Let me do this with the children, like, because I couldn't separate. Yesterday I could separate myself because my partner was around, but there's been other times when I've just said, right, kids, mummy needs to light a candle, sit on the floor, which is the equivalent of putting your feet in the earth. It was night time, I couldn't go out. And we're going to light some, we're going to light some herbs, or we're going to light some incense. And I think I'm getting better at just verbalizing where I'm at with my children, and including my cycle. They know all about that. The parts where mummy.
Yeah.
And I try to make them kind of allies, partners in what I need, what my internal world needs. Because that's the other thing, trying to do everything as a mother kind of separately from our children, privately, all the rest of it. I just think it's easier sometimes to just be honest with them. You don't have to explain it in the greatest of detail, but just saying mummy needs some quiet time, or can you help mummy light a candle and just sit with her for a minute, or I don't know. Just ways of sort of normalizing those moments. Anyway, I don't think I quite answered your question about the gap. But
you did, because also you so beautifully, as you always do, is the alternative would seem to me to have been, and there may have been an element of this, and we're not going to judge it, and we're going to love it into being, of course, of screaming, shouting, raging, and making the children feel wrong for what is going on for you. And that is almost a very automatic behavior. And the children sense it. So what I'm hearing is, at some point when it felt right, when you felt a little bit more settled, you were able to presence, this is what mummy needs. And it's that. It's almost that's what I would sort of say. It's like we can react, or we can respond. You were responding to life and responding to your children rather than reacting.
There was the beginnings of the reacting, though. There was the beginnings of the victimhood. There was the, I've been making dinner and no one's laying the table and blah, 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 blah. There was definitely that. And then there was oh, guys, I'm really sorry. I can see I'm in the autumn of my cycle. This is when these sorts of things really grate on me. That's not your responsibility. That's mine. But this is happening. Just because it helps them understand as well. And I can see I need this. So can we light a candle? Blah, blah, blah. Anyway, yes. I am so not perfect at it, but the intention is there to keep seeing it. And the more you see it and the more you practice it, it becomes possible, right? There's something you can do.
Yeah. And you're imperfectly perfect. It is absolutely correct and proper. And it's going to alter, particularly as we change and our children change and our life, it's going to do that. So it is imperfectly perfect.
Yeah.
Love.
Yeah.
the love,
Yeah.
love, love, love. And not, I know for a fact that because you've illuminated so many of those old stories, that you're like, I know you didn't, but your reaction will be shorter because,
Yes, you move through the storm much quicker. That is for sure.
and it's,
And there's way less judgment. So with the bit that was imperfect yesterday, I don't even stop to bother myself with judging that. When I went into Vic, I just can't even be doing with it, because that detracts from where my real focus, I want my real focus to be, which is on the reparation, the saying, sorry guys, I lost it there. Do you mind helping me? The moving on to love.
yes, yes. And, right, it's like for me, in my, how I used to be, is I would sort of naturally do that, or things would change, or we'd be onto a new activity, or, something, oh, let's put the tea, of course, like things just flow, like naturally, things do change, children at their essence invite you into flow and change. So there could be a blow up and I could be shouting and it could go wrong and then something would naturally change. But what didn't change was my internal world. So externally, it looked like the shouting's finished. Alex is now watching the TV. Freddie's doing this, all's well. And suddenly I'd be reading maybe with Thomas or whatever. So they're all fine. Anna is still internally, because I didn't have what we're pointing to in, I had no understanding, was, well, look how bad that was. So I'm reading with Thomas, for example, and still having this battle inside of, well, I messed up there and I've messed up the children and look how much I shouted at them. And now they're going to turn out like, and like literally. So once I've then got them, I mean, let's just say then they've gone to bed, for example, of course, and all is well, I am still battling my inner demons. And how exhausting that is. I mean, I could sit, I can really feel the tears of love arising for me and for every other mum. Like, because I actually know that whilst my experience was probably a little bit extreme in terms of the level of depression and the energy issues that caused me and things, and chronic fatigue, that inner battle kind of nightly, every evening, is present for so many mothers.